this continues a tax credit for a customized job training program that benefits Washington businesses that want to upskill their workforce. Thank Representative Levitt as a prime sponsor of this bill. This is House Bill 2034. It makes a temporary change to a property tax levy for one park district in King County to keep voter-approved collections from declining. Thank Representative Fitzgibbon, who had such a fantastic leadership this year. This is House Bill 1109. It builds on previous work we've done to improve sexual assault investigations. It requires the appropriate agencies to collect and review information to determine what is being done in cases where there is a DNA match. It also requires the Criminal Justice Training Commission to review case files to improve training and investigations in sexual assault cases. As a whole, this bill builds on our next step to pursue justice for sexual assault survivors. I want to thank the Sexual Assault Forensic Examination Best Practice Task Force, the King County Sexual Assault Resource Center, and the sexual assault survivors whose work led to this bill, and Representative Orwell, who is the prime sponsor of this effort. This House Bill 1113, this provides an additional week for schools to reach out to students and their families when a student has more than 7 unexcused absences in a month, or more than 15 unexcused absences in a year. These changes focus on engaging with students and families earlier, which will likely provide students with a better chance of success in the long term. Thank Representative Ortiz Self, and thanks to the companion bill sponsor, Senator Claire Wilson. This House Bill 1176, it prevents school districts from holding back a student's transcripts or grades when they have fines or fees through the school district. Eliminating this penalty means an unpaid fee won't stand in the way of a student entering a post-secondary institution and earning a living wage. The State Board for Community and Technical Colleges requested this bill, and I want to thank Representative Paul. We're not going to ask who paid his library fines so he could graduate in pennies. This is House Bill 1251. It expands where a person can use a wheeled all-terrain vehicle. Thank Representative Orcutt. It allows counties to decide in consultation with the Department of Transportation whether certain road segments are practical for this type of vehicle. This House Bill 1271, it ensures we can continue our county operations during the COVID-19 pandemic and future health crises. This bill will let a number of county activities take place electronically, will extend the due date for local government fiscal reports, and will identify coroners or medical examiners as first responders. Thanks, Representative Orwell. This is House Bill 1289. It allows a winery employee between 18 and 21 years old to engage in wine production and work in a winery's production facility as long as there is someone who is at least 21 years of age who can supervise the premises. Thank Representative Chambers. This is House Bill 1296. It gives behavioral health centers across the state a tax deduction on grant funding to address mental health in Washington. These centers won't owe certain business taxes on these grants, which means they have more money to expand and provide more behavioral health services and substance use treatment to their patients. Thanks, Representative Young. This is House Bill 1314. It supports our veterans by creating options to divert them from the state's involuntary treatment system to the federal Veterans Health Administration when possible. Veterans can find themselves in facilities that do not understand or have the knowledge or access to the behavioral health options and tailored care that the federal VHA offers. This bill increases coordination between the FHA and behavioral health providers so that veterans can connect to the federal Veterans Affairs system. Thanks, Representative Young. This House Bill 1325, it helps primary care providers better diagnose and refer children to professionals who can address their mental health needs. There is a significant shortage of children's mental health practitioners throughout the state, and this will help parents and youth who are in crises more quickly seek appropriate mental health services. Thanks, Representative Callan. This House Bill 1326, it makes changes to training, autopsy reimbursement, and case management for coroners and medical examiners. Thanks, Representative McKenna. This bill will increase consistency and confidence in the outcomes of death investigations in the state. This House Bill 1356, it prohibits Washington schools from using Native American names, symbols, and imagery as mascots, logos, or team names unless a tribal government has approved. It also creates a grant program at the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction to help cover some of the costs for new names and imagery. This bill will end the disrespectful use of Native American imagery in our public schools. Thanks, Representative McConoff, as the prime sponsor of this bill. This House Bill 1363, it establishes a stronger mental health resources to help our educators and school staff who are dealing with secondary traumatic stress. They often experience this when responding to school emergencies or when they work with students who are experiencing their own mental health issues. Thank Representative Ortiz-Self. This House Bill 1370, it modifies the Early Learning Facilities Program by increasing the amount of money that applicants can ask for. This means we have a broader range of projects that can be eligible for funding, and we have more flexibility in how we can use the funds. Thanks, Representative Callan. This House Bill 1379, it creates a more coordinated and cohesive state approach to managing unmanned aircraft systems by establishing a dedicated position within the Department of Transportation's Aviation Division. State and federal programs working together on this will increase public safety. Thanks, Representative Lovick. This House Bill 1423, it allows the Department of Natural Resources to issue civil penalties for anyone who violates outdoor burn permit requirements. Clear enforcement authority is an important tool for managing smoke in our state. This bill helps us better manage smoke to protect public health and the environment. Thanks, Representative Fitzgibbon. This House Bill 1425, it expands scholarship opportunities for students in rural counties who want to attend community and technical college. These students don't have to graduate from a Washington high school to benefit from this scholarship. Thanks, Representative Taylor. This House Bill 1472, it adds a graduate student as a member of the 9-member Washington Student Achievement Council. Thank Representative Slatter. This House Bill 1514 encourages more people to get involved with the commute trip reduction program, which reduces single occupancy riders and has the potential to reduce emissions. This bill offers more flexibility in van pool rules and requirements. It can help our successful van pool program serve smaller businesses, provide service to communities beyond the typical 8-to-5 workday, and offer more transportation choices. Thanks, Representative Taylor, and also Senator Saldana for the companion bill. This is House Bill 1529, allows the state to use funding from an existing state Route 520 account to cover costs for the bridge near Seattle when toll revenues aren't enough. During COVID-19, fewer drivers were on the road, so we couldn't collect adequate toll revenues for this area. This bill will help us meet our financial and legal obligation with the bridge. Thanks, Representative Barkas. This is Senate Bill 1519. It creates efficiency in how counties record documents by allowing the Secretary of State to create statewide regulations. These simplifies recording standards will benefit county recorders, real estate firms, title and escrow companies, and consumer groups. Thanks, Senator Cooter. This Senate Bill 5048, it allows our insurance companies to get their own insurance coverage outside the United States. This practice will bring us in line with recent changes to federal insurance laws. Thanks, Senator Mullet. This Senate Bill 5119, it requires the Department of Corrections, city jails, and county jails to conduct fatality reviews when a person unexpectedly dies in their facilities. This bill may help reduce the preventable deaths of incarcerated individuals and strengthen the health and safety protections for people in the prisons and jails. Thanks, Senator Darneal. Senate Bill 5132 will give us consistency with other states and our trust in the state laws. Sponsors Senator Peterson and Senator Padden for their leadership. This is Senate Bill 5164. It allows the same law to be applied to everyone convicted of robbery in the second degree. The legislature already removed robbery in the second degree as a strike offense for new convictions. This bill should help reduce some of the disproportionate impact on people of color who were sentenced as persistent offenders. Thank you to Senator Darneal. This is Senate Bill 5177. It modifies several sex offenses by removing the requirement to prove the victim is not married to the perpetrator as an element of the crime. This change updates our statutes and resolves issues for when we determine someone's criminal history in these cases. Thanks, Senator Cleveland. This Senate Bill 5220, it provides clarity on how to apply sales and use tax exemptions for salmon recovery grants. These grants are critical for salmon habitat restoration projects, and these tax exemptions make more grant funds available for restoration activities. The Department of Revenue requested this bill, led by Senator Vandoy. Senate Bill 5249, it continues a work group that explores and expands the educational concept of mastery-based learning. This type of personalized learning includes specific ways to measure a student's competency and allows students to advance once they demonstrate that they've mastered the content. This work group will develop a Washington profile of a high school graduate that describes the skills that a student will have once they graduate. Thanks, Senator Wellman. The Senate Bill 5251, this modifies tax and revenue laws by easing compliance burdens for taxpayers, clarifying ambiguities, making technical corrections, and providing administrative efficiencies. Thanks to our sponsor, Senator Schussler, and for his annual bill that makes these corrections. The Senate Bill 5254, this protects employees or contractors who voluntarily want to wear personal protective equipment during a public health emergency, even if their employer does not require them to do so. This bill gives employees more protection over their personal safety. Thanks, Senator Sullivan. The Senate Bill 5401, this allows community and technical colleges to expand high-demand computer science degrees across Washington. Our state will continue its global competitiveness through bills such as this that give more individuals the skills and talents they need to keep Washington the home of innovation. Thanks, Senator Wynn.
Thank you, Governor. We're done. Yeah.
Thank you, Angie, for your efficiency.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that, we will go to media Q&A. So up first, we'll go to Rachel LaCourte with AP. Go ahead, Rachel.
Hi, good afternoon, Governor. Two of the climate bills you'll be signing this month, the cap and trade and low carbon fuel, are tied to the passage of a transportation revenue package by 2023. Do you agree with that provision in those bills? And do you think lawmakers should wait to meet next session to address that, or do you want them to return at some point this year?
Well, no, I don't agree with those provisions. I do agree we need a transportation package, though, and I am looking forward to working with legislators in that direction. And this is not a criticism. This legislature was incredibly productive. The enormity, the complexity, the comprehensive nature of the work they provided on so many issues was really historic. We've used that term, but it's true. I mean, I've been in here since 1989. And I've never seen a legislative session that was as productive, both as to quantity and quality this year of the work they've done. But we do need a transportation package that will allow our state to move forward. And I'm encouraged that legislative leaders, I think, are committed to that. Some of their comments last night were helpful in that regard. So I want to stress we will be working on those issues while we're not technically in session. And I'm looking forward to that.
All right, up next, we'll go to Joe Sullivan with the Seattle Times. Go ahead, Joe.
Hi, Governor. Just to be clear then, if you disagree with those provisions, do you intend to veto them?
We are reviewing all the laws, and we're not prepared to make decisions about vetoes today. We're looking at all the laws and all of their implications to be able to answer those questions.
All right, up next, we'll go to Sarah Gensler with McClatchy. Go ahead, Sarah.
The bill to address the Blake decision, as you know, that includes making possession a misdemeanor for 2 years, requiring diversions, building up a more treatment-centered system, and sunsetting criminalization. So what are your observations on how that process went? And it was a pretty unique situation the lawmakers were in. And do you have any concerns about where they landed?
Well, I think it went with a lot of people really wrestling in a short time period that they were compelled to act in. And it went as well as you can expect. There's a lot of diversity of thought about the next step. My belief is they reached a reasonable conclusion in the spectrum of thought on this issue. And the reason I think it is reasonable is that first it will focus on treatment to get people to have treatment of their chemical addiction programs, which vast swaths of the public understand that's the most effective thing to do. It does maintain some incentive for that, to incentivize people by using the tool of a potential criminal enforcement to incentivize them to go into chemical addiction, but doesn't put people in jail, immediately on the first couple of interactions with law enforcement. So I think that it hewed to some general concepts where the public are, is that we'd like people to get treatment, we want to help them get treatment, and we want to have some incentive that they do so. And I think that was the general tenor of where the legislature ended up. And as far as how that worked, it worked with a lot of people listening to each other, which they did, even remotely, which again is a comment on this session. To me, it's a testimony to the innovative leadership of these legislators who were able to do this work remotely in a very short period of time. They just had weeks. Usually something like this takes a year of thought, and they were able to do it in a way that, again, I think reached a reasonable position. And also nobody got sick, nobody got COVID during this whole period. You look at other legislators that had huge outbreaks in their activities and didn't produce as much as this group did. So the legislator leaders and the rank and file, both Democrats and Republicans, I think deserve credit in this regard.
All right, up next, we'll go to Jerry Cornfield with the Everett Herald. Go ahead.
By the way, if I may, I do want to say something about the minority legislators this year under the leadership of Senator Braun and J.T. Wilcox. Obviously, they did not prevail in many of their options, but they have always conducted themselves, at least in our dealings, civilly and with the concept of trying to reach some good result. I appreciate their efforts in that regard.
Up next, we'll go to Jerry Cornfield with the Everett Herald. Go ahead, Jerry.
Two-part question, Governor. First, on the transportation package, if you could clarify, if the lawmakers do work out a package between now and January, are you prepared to call them back for special session to act on it? Or is this a 2022 decision? And then secondly, could you update us, are there any immigrant families or children in Washington or being brought to Washington?
I'm unaware, if there are, I'm unaware of that as far as being in the state of Washington. Yes, if there's progress or potential resolution of transportation, you bet we're prepared to call people back. Now, one of the wonderful things are they don't have to come back physically. It makes it a lot easier for them when they've gone back to their other professional and family lives. But we do need to have further work. People need to really opening up their listening skills to each other so we can move forward in transportation. And I'm looking forward to that work going on. And there's no reason to wait till the regular schedule to get that job done. We got things we got to build, we got bridges we got to fix, and I would look forward to that.
All right, up next, we'll go to Austin Jenkins with the Northwest News Network. Go ahead, Austin.
Hi, Governor. I know that the capital budget contemplates the removal of the security fence that's up around the Capitol. What's your thinking about whether you wait, I think, till the May 31st deadline, whether you order it taken down, and just the general security posture on the campus now that the session's over?
Well, I haven't any recent updates. From my perspective, it seems reasonable they could come down, but I'll get a security update in the next couple of days, and then we'll make a decision in that regard.
All right, up next, we'll go to Laurel Demkovich with the Spokesman Review. Go ahead, Laurel.
Hi, Governor. The capital gains tax that passed out of the legislature taxes less people, brings in less money for the state than the one that you had proposed in December. Do you think that this final version is enough? Or do you imagine at any point in the future maybe pushing for something that might bring in more money for the state?
Well, we've only been out of the last session for what? I don't know, 14 hours here. So it's a little early to start thinking about the next agenda item, but no, I'm just pleased that that this big step was taken towards fairness. I think it's a huge achievement. We've had the most unfair tax system in America, and this will bring a good portion of fairness to our tax system. As you know, this is something I've been working on years, and when you work on something for years, it's good to celebrate the success for at least 15 hours before I think about the next step. And I don't have any particular other steps contemplated or under consideration.
Okay. Up next, we'll go to Essex Porter with Cairo 7. Go ahead, Essex.
Governor, staying on the theme of something to celebrate, would you share more of your feelings about the passage of the climate change legislation, realizing it's not completely cemented yet with the money, but would you just share your feelings of success, what this means now for Washington, and will it cost Washingtonians too much?
No, when our children can breathe without gasping for breath from asthma because they've been breathing all of this pollution that is spewing into the air, that's reducing costs. It's reducing the costs that our children have trying to struggle for breath because of the epidemic of asthma. It will reduce the costs that people have when our forests burn down and our children can't go outside to play because it's too smoky. It will reduce the cost to the fishing and shellfish industry because the waters are so acidified that our baby oysters can't grow in our waters because of carbon pollution. No, this is an economic win for the state of Washington, both because it will reduce the costs of pollution, which are dramatic. It kills hundreds of thousands of people every year, air pollution. And that costs a lot of money when people lose their lives. But it will also create jobs by the bucketful. We know clean energy jobs are growing faster than the rest of the economy. We're growing jobs in every corner of the state of Washington. I just was so excited that the most efficient solar cell manufacturer in the Western Hemisphere, I think, is now opening a new factory in Burlington. We're looking at the cross-laminated timber in Spokane. We're seeing energy retrofits all over the state of Washington. This is a job creator. So we're saving our children's health, we're creating clean energy jobs, and we're doing it in a very rational and common sense way. The legislators were very careful when they designed both of these bills, both the cap and invest bill and the clean fuel standard. And these, when implemented, will help lead the country forward. There's another prospect or characteristic of these bills that I think are noteworthy too. Not only are they as far-sighted and aggressive as any in the United States as far as reducing carbon pollution, but they clearly are the most environmentally justice-oriented. They provide the strongest protection to make sure that we don't continue the pattern of overburdened communities, communities of poverty, communities of color, who've had to frequently breathe this diesel smoke because they're living closer to the freeways and polluting industries. And this has actually, I believe, the first regulatory system that would allow us to prevent the concentration of this pollution in overburdened communities. I believe this is the first in the nation. We also have a good provision in there to make sure investments go to create jobs everywhere, including overburdened communities. So this is an aspect of the bills I think legislators can be very proud of. Reuben Carvalho worked on that in the Senate. Joe Fitzgibbon led the effort in the House. And they both were very attentive to all of those things. And I think did a tremendous job fashioning the nuts and bolts of this world-class legislation. We need to get it implemented, as you know.
All right, up next, we'll go to Drew Mickelson with King 5. Go ahead, Drew.
Good afternoon, Governor. Back to the issue of the capital gains tax. You know, critics, Republicans say this is just paving the way for an income tax. Is there a way that you can assure the public that you would not expand the threshold to perhaps spread it to a larger group of taxpayers?
I have no plans to do so, and I haven't heard any discussion about doing that. So the Republicans have been fighting for an unfair tax system for decades. And to some degree, they won that fight until yesterday. Now, it never made sense to me that the Republican position on this is that working people, those in the bottom fifth quintile of earnings, these are the people who take care of us, who run the hospitals, who feed us, who are truck drivers, and they're paying 4 to 5 times more taxes per dollar of their income than multimillionaires. That has never made sense to me. I don't know why any party thought that made sense. My party doesn't think that makes sense, so we did something about it. It took us a long time, but we've done it in this regard. And I think it's very fair. It is a rate that's quite low in respect, or certainly not high relative to other states. So any day you make your system more fair is a good day, and that's what we've done. And I have not heard anybody plan on changing that.
Up next, we'll
By the way, I know this will shock you, but some people say things that aren't true sometimes in this regard. I heard on the radio the other morning a Republican legislator saying, this is going to be a tax on your income for anybody earning $25,000. That's just an outright lie, and we don't appreciate that. This is affects only a small number of capital transactions. It is not a tax on income for those folks, or anybody else for that matter. It's an excise tax. So I'm glad that we've done something for fairness and justice at long last in our state. But we have led the country in so many things. We're the best in the country in so many things. You know, we've been listed the best place to live 2 years running in the last 2 years. I mean, whatever state has ever been listed the best state in the country 2 years in a row. And we're the best in so many things. You know, our education, our environment, our justice programs, our worker protections, our social laws that protect everybody. But in this one thing, until yesterday, we were the worst in the United States that was most unfair to working people. These are people who work hard, and they don't deserve to get treated with the short end of the stick. So I'm proud of what we did yesterday.
Up next, we'll go to Casey Decker with CREM. Go ahead, Casey.
I had a couple of questions regarding the bill addressing the Blake decision as well. You mentioned the speed with which this was put together. So I was curious, first of all, if you view this as more of a stopgap measure until a fuller legislative session, or if you're hopeful that this signifies a more permanent change in state drug policy. And then secondly, you talked about the incentives. Obviously, some people expressed that the incentives weren't strong enough. And I was curious what you think about that as well.
Well, I'm comfortable with them. It does provide an incentive through the criminal justice system to get access to treatment. And ultimately, we know that that's what really breaks the cycle of addiction. It's what really reduces crime, is to get people in treatment long-term so they break that monkey on their back. They don't have to go back to a life of crime. They can go back to their families and their jobs in their communities. That's what really works. And I think there's just really broad understanding of that right now. And I think having a incarceration as a possibility if you don't get treatment is a good enough incentive in this regard. So I'm very comfortable where the legislature landed on this. Now, as far as its permanence, we'll learn things in the next couple of years. I hope it's successful in getting more people into treatment. But over time, this will be reviewed. But I feel pretty good about where it is. I think it's going to help a lot of people both get into treatment and respond to the Supreme Court decision.
Time for a few more questions.
Time for 2 more questions. Up next, we'll go to Keith Eldridge with Como News. Go ahead, Keith.
Governor, police reform, Republicans say well-intentioned, but they went too far. Your thoughts on that? And also, next Monday, you're going to be making a decision to reevaluate counties. Are you going to stick to your guns on the metrics you're using?
Yeah, the plan is the plan at the moment. There's been no changes that we've announced. We will look at the metrics, and at the moment, as far as we can tell, the metrics will tell the tale. That decision will be made by the numbers. It will be made by the metrics, according to the metrics that we have established. And we hope that we can get on top of this pandemic. The numbers have continued to rise, as you know. It's very concerning. We've seen what is happening in Michigan right now. So we're hopeful that people can hew to these rules that we have today so we don't end up in a worse position. And we're hopeful, but we're crossing our fingers. Your first question was, I totally forgot your first question.
Had to do with police reform. Republicans are saying they're well-intentioned, but they believe they went too far and will cause people who don't want to be a police officer anymore. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think this is one place where I think the legislators, well, it's not one place, it's one of the places, did a really good job, and I'll tell you why. We all have felt the trauma of violence that people have had. It's been a national experience. And the emotions are high on this for good reason, to see the trauma that people have suffered. And I think there was some possibility the legislature would act in a knee-jerk fashion and would not actually fashion legislation that was carefully crafted, that really understood the ramifications of what they were doing, that didn't listen to people about what the bill could actually do. I got to tell you, I think they were extremely responsible in looking at the real-life ramifications of the laws that they have passed. A lot of them worked hard on it. Representative Jesse Johnson, I thought, was spectacular in trying to fashion a really carefully calibrated response on multiple, and there were multiple bills. I know there were other legislators. I just mentioned him because I thought that he helped on one particular bill particularly. I think the independent investigation bill that I had asked for was well calibrated. I think it will be effectuated. I think it's extremely important. And this wasn't that easy because we have to stand up a new system that's independent from the former law enforcement system. It's harder to do than just passing a one-sentence bill. So and I've had some experience on this. I used to prosecute drunk driving cases and domestic violence cases for a decade. I've worked quite a bit with law enforcement officers. I have real respect for them and what they do, and they face some real challenges in their professional activities. And having watched them work, I believe that they can do their jobs with these laws in place. I think they have brought an appropriate level of accountability. I think they've given more clarity as to our responsibility as law enforcement officers to the general public. I think they brought a better way to evaluate police conduct in a way that's fair to everybody, including the law enforcement officers. So I think they did a really good job in a very complex area.
Okay, we've got time for one last question.
If I may, let me just segue from that though. We're not done on this effort. These were very significant bills, and again, there were more than, I think they touched on all of the areas, at least retrospectively they could. But we do have more work to do in this regard. You know, we need to improve our recruitment of police officers, to have more diversity in the police officer and law enforcement field. We're working on that. We're working on that in our state patrol, as a matter of fact. I think there's some more things we can do to make sure that we don't have, you know, people pulled over while driving while black. I think there's some record-keeping improvements that we need to do. So I just want to point out that there was a lot done this session, but I think there's more work that we'll need to do.
Okay, we've got time for one last question. We'll go to Brandon Block with the Olympian. Go ahead, Brandon.
Hi, Governor. You signed a bill last week that makes Washington the first state in the country to guarantee legal representation to low-income tenants who are facing eviction. It also contains an amendment that would end the eviction moratorium on June 30. I know you vetoed a couple of sections, but not that one. So do you agree that it should end then, or would you consider extending eviction protections past that point, or even issuing a new moratorium? What's your thinking on that?
Well, it wasn't really necessary because it was kind of a non-entity, because our proclamation ended that date anyway, so it really didn't do anything. Wasn't worth the red ink. But yes, we do have the capability of issuing another proclamation immediately thereafter. We haven't made any decisions about that, but we would have the legal authority to do that. Like everything else in this pandemic, we'll evaluate these decisions at a little later date, depending on all the circumstances of this pandemic.
Any final words, Governor?
No, again, I served as a legislature for 4 years here. I served in Congress for, a decade and a half. I have some sense of what it takes to get things done in a legislative body. And I just cannot tell you how much I respect this group of legislators, what they did this year. Their efforts were so broad in the number of things that they worked on in such a difficult circumstances in the middle of a pandemic. I think their performance was spectacular. And I will tell you, it is the custom in our democracy always to sort of criticize public officials. That is the nature, it's a recreational sport. It's part of democracy. But I'm really proud to work with this group of people. They were so careful and dedicated at the same time. Their work product, I think, appropriately listened to every quarter of the compass. They made sophisticated judgments rather than knee-jerk decisions. They tackled some really, really hard jobs. And they produced more than any other legislature in a quarter of a century. And I say that without diminishing previous legislators. So I feel really good about their efforts. I hope they do. I think Washingtonians are going to be healthier. They're going to have better mental health. They're hopefully going to have less violence. Hopefully we're going to move forward on pollution. People are going to get overtime who feed us in agriculture. This is huge wins. And I just want to thank all the legislators of both parties for their efforts. Really appreciate it. Thank you.